This is September 17th, 2003. We are at the Peabody Public Library. Today we are interviewing Louis W. Brown. I am Janet Skank, the director of the library. Mr. Brown, what branch of the service did you serve in?
The U.S. Merchant Marine.
And in what war?
World War II.
And your rank?
I was a radio officer.
Okay, and you know what rank that was? Like, I don't know what the ranks are in the Merchant Marine, like sergeant or...
It's pretty much like a civilian radio.
Okay, it's a civilian. Okay, well, then we're going to learn a lot today, aren't we? You're going to educate me on the Merchant Marines. And where you served?
In the Atlantic and the Pacific.
In the Atlantic and the Pacific. Okay, Mr. Brown, did you enlist in the Merchant Marines, or were you drafted, if they drafted you into the Merchant Marines?
No, I was with the Indiana State Police and we were exempt, but all my friends were going to the war and I thought of it. And then finally the War Shipping Administration called and wanted a radio operator. So they signed me up and shipped me to San Francisco.
San Francisco. Do you remember your first days when they shipped you, what it was like, the kind of things that you did when you went out to San Francisco?
Well, of course I was pretty green. We had a meeting, the captain and all the people, and they took some mug shots and one thing and another, and then we signed what we call ship's articles. Ordinarily it'd tell a sailor where he is going and how much he's making and where he's going to come back to. But in this case it just said mission of war. So we knew he was going someplace. And then later we made up in a big convoy out off of Alcatraz and went west.
Do you remember the people who were in charge there? What kind of people they were? Did you like them?
All business sort of people. Of course, anyone with a badge or insignia you always respect.
Okay. Why don't you tell me about the kind of things a merchant mariner would have done during World War II?
Well, the merchant marine took all the supplies, and it was a big problem of getting supplies to the place they needed it and everything. Like we'd go in with a ship full of high-octane gasoline and when they needed it. And we carried the boys over there, and then we carried the supplies to them. Because the Navy and the Army didn't have a unit set up like the Merchant Marines.
When you were delivering these supplies, did you go deliver them to ships or to locations, or?
I usually went to an island.
An island?
In the South Pacific. And the instance I'm speaking of, our convoy, we was towing dry docks. And I don't remember how many in the convoy, but we broke down out around the equator and the international date line, and they sent us into the New Hebrides. So I always say I never knew where we was going because we never got there. And it didn't show on my articles. And then later I came back to the States, and I was on a coastal Liberty tanker, the Tobias East Stansbury, and we went to, we'd go to Corpus Christi or Beaumont or Port Arthur and pick up heavy crude and take it back up to Berth Amboy. And I was on that ship when a peace was declared in Germany. I always got to tell that story. The interesting to me was that we had a young captain, and all the celebration was going on up and down I don't remember if it was in Codere Basin or Jersey City, but I said to the captain, how about let me go up and blow the whistle? That made my day. We sent messages up and down the harbor till we'd run out of steam. And then the last trip I made was on the Champ Clark. It was a Liberty dry cargo ship.
What is a Liberty dry cargo ship? What does that mean?
Liberty was those ships that were made real cheap and real fast, and they carried about everything until the Victor ship come along at the end of the war. But this Liberty ship, they loaded it with airplane landing stripping, metal stripping that they could lay on the surface of the ground and land their airplanes on. And I recall they kept loading that ship, kept loading it, and it kept settling down in the water. And finally they quit, and then they started to take on bunkers, and they found out that they had the ship loaded so heavy that they couldn't take on full bunkers. So we left Jersey City or wherever it was with a ship without full bunkers. And I recall writing to my wife that we called our ship the SS Sink Fast because it was loaded down. Anyway, we got in Cologne and going through the Panama Canal, and they took on the rest of the bunkers. And then we ended up in Olympia, Washington, where our ship was discharged on the railroad dock, and then it was loaded into a Russian ship. And that was the last trip. The war was pretty well over, and instead of signing articles for the Pacific, I just came home.
Okay. Did you see any hostilities? Because you were in as much danger as anybody else.
Well, my ship surface attacked, or submarine attacked, we never had any. But we were in different zones. We got different pay. And I was never in the 100% zone. That your ship had to be attacked, under attack. But I was in the 60% zone where the submarines were for quite a while. And
would that have been in the Pacific then?
yeah, out around the Hebrides, out in that area.
Okay. Touch briefly on your family life. You said you were married when you enlisted?
Yes.
Okay.
My wife Ann, the state police had opened up a new post at Connorsville, and they sent me down there as chief operator. And Ann and I had just gotten married, so we were there at the time. And of course, after I come back, why they give me a job back.
Good. How about supplies, things like food and clothing? Were there shortages, or did that affect you at all?
Merchant seamen had to, nothing was furnished. We bought our own everything. We wanted a uniform with those insignias. Of course, the badges and the signals are all awarded to us, but we were pretty much like a civilian operation.
Okay.
And I thought it was interesting that these Army soldiers, I think, were given $10,000 insurance for very little fee, you know. But the merchant seamen, I remember one trip I made, and I wanted to get some insurance for Annie, and it was $6 1,000 for every month. And at the union halls, there's always men around there wanting to insure me because they make some money. But that was more toward the first of the war. After war got going, we got control of the submarines. But that was still last trip I think I made was when I got insured for $6 1,000, and then you just buy it for the trip. And last trip I was on, of course, was from New York to Olympia, Washington.
How about good luck charms? A lot of people we talked to said they had good luck, things they did for good luck. Did you have any of that?
You mean you feel like this happened good to you?
Well, something, you know, like some people have rabbit's feet, or some people might have, I don't know, wore the same socks all the time or something like that.
I guess I never thought too much about that. I always felt that I was so lucky compared to many of the men that I sailed with, because I've sailed with Australians and different people that's really suffered a lot from the war.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the men that you actually sailed with. You said it was international. You were on the same ship.
Well, in the merchant seamen, the company hired qualified men, and that's about what it amounted to. So we had Australians and a little bit of everything on our ship. I become good acquainted with a third mate on the Sombrero Key, and he once showed me a picture of the girl he's going to marry, and she was one of these Rands that was in London, you know, and she got killed during the Blitz. And then he showed me a picture of his dad, and his dad was in the Royal New Zealand Navy. He got killed lifting those floating torpedoes that they sunk. And you realize that you're one of the lucky ones.
Let's switch here. How about some entertainment? What you guys do for fun?
Well, the services had different organizations, and the Merchant Marine had, I can't sure tell you the name of it, SS something, but they had a service for seamen too. And I recall being in New York once, I guess when they took our ship into Todd Erie Basin and fumigated it for cockroaches, stuff like that.
We'll have to get into that. They had to fumigate your ship for cockroaches?
Oh, anyway, I went to the seaman service one night, and there was Bob, the baseball player, Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth.
And he was pretty old then. Of course, this was probably 1944. And he talked to us a little bit. And I thought it was kind of nice. I got to actually meet him. But I guess merchant seamen were kind of a tough bunch. They usually got thirsty.
Well, I want to get back to fumigating your ship for cockroaches. Is that normal? Did that happen often?
Oh, I think we probably went in for something else too.
Oh, okay.
But they took us off the ship and put us in a hotel. And as soon as it happened, I sent a note to my wife and that was going to be in a hotel room, and she was working in a factory in Connersville. And next day she showed up. I said, "How'd you get off work?" And she said, "I didn't. I quit." But
and that would have been on the East Coast then, right?
yeah, we was in probably in Todd Erie Basin. But our ship, we were one of the lucky ones. We did crossing the bay there one day. I don't know why they moved us in the fog, and we were empty. And a big tanker or a ship that's empty is just like a cork on the water, you know, it isn't loaded down. We was crossing there, and they had the big I forgot the name of this big black thing they put up on the mast that swirls around so that other people can see it. And there was a fellow there, of course, it's blowing the horn at a certain period of time all the time. Anyway, I heard a bang and I run to the side of the ship, and there was, way down there was a New York car ferry, or a New York ferry. And it hit the ship at the front and just skidded the full length of the ship. I always wondered how many wet pants there wasn't going to work that day, because boy, that would have been a something. But it didn't damage the ship. It made a line, it made a hole in the ship above the water line, so it wasn't a problem. And I don't know what happened.
You said when the service, well, still family life, you were married. How did you keep in touch with your wife?
Well, we'd send these little light, what do they call them, envelopes, and then they'd go through some service and they'd cut out what they didn't want. And
they censored them.
Yeah, I remember out in the South Pacific on the New Hebrides, of course I was interested in radio, so I went ashore, and they had what they called a mosquito network they broadcast. And I said, I used to know a Johnson with, well, WIBC or something in Indianapolis. And the guy said, that's him, the red-headed kid. Well, when I wrote my wife then, I said that I was ashore and I visited with so-and-so, and got a hold of one of the radio operators that knew where this man was. So that's the way Ann discovered that I was in the New Hebrides.
Found ways to do it. You said you were on your ship when the war in Europe ended. And you said that, where was that again? Where was the ship?
We were in, I'm not sure, Todd Erie Basin, or maybe Berth Amboy, or
Berth Amboy, New Jersey?
Yeah, or Jersey City, one of those places.
And you said you got to ring your sound the bell, or whatever it is.
Yeah, the ship's whistle.
Ship's whistle, I'm sorry. Did you get to go on shore after that?
I don't remember. We didn't get to shore a lot. The ship was always afraid a sailor would jump ship, and then they couldn't sign it. They couldn't sail without a compliment.
Well, how about the reaction of the men on board then? What was it like on board?
Well, I think the steward gave us a good meal, and everybody was happy. But of course, everybody knew they were just going to leave New York and go to the Pacific.
Okay. When did you actually leave the service? When you left in 1945. Where were you when you actually left the service?
It was in the fall. I don't know whether it was around Christmas or when. And I left from Olympia, Washington. From
Olympia, Washington? Mm-hmm. Is that where it was the war over in the Pacific at that time?
No, but I think they'd bombed the atomic bombs, and we knew it was...
Within days?
Yeah, we knew it was going to be over.
Okay. When you got back here to your family, back in Indiana, what kind of reaction did you get, reception? I imagine your wife was very glad to see you. We know that.
Yeah.
But how about other people around?
Well, they all seemed friendly. The captain, I was stationed at Connersville, and the captain said he'd give me a job in Indianapolis. So I dispatched from the State House there for a while, and then they sent me to Ligonier, Indiana. But they give us continuous pay as far as our pension and retirements and everything. So we didn't lose time when we was in the service, and I always appreciate that.
Good. Were merchant people that served in the Merchant Marine, were you eligible for any of the GI benefits, GI Bill benefits?
Well, not till recently. Recently, they put us under the U.S. Coast Guard, and now I got my DD 224, whatever it is. I could get medical help or.
So you weren't eligible right after war then for the educational benefits or
No,
anything like
nothing
that?
like that.
You didn't get anything like that? Okay. After the war then, you said you went back to the state police, is that what you did?
Yeah.
Okay, and they sent you down to Indianapolis and then up to Ligonier? And is that what the field you stayed in then until?
Yeah, I was always a communications officer, and I retired in 1966.
Okay. Did what you learned during the war influence you in any way? Did it help you in any way?
Well, technically, or I don't think so, but you get a lot of time to think, and you think about all the catastrophes that you've been in that never happened. I recall this young third mate and I was friends out there in the South Pacific, and one day after standing my watch I went out on the bridge, and of course the ship was all blacked out, and I was standing there looking out over the ocean, and third mate come alongside of me and finally said, "Sparks, you can see anything you want out there." And you know, I thought a lot about that in life. You got to think things out. And I think it's helped.
Yes, I just caught something there. You had a nickname?
Well, radio operators were Sparks.
Sparks?
Yeah, they always called. That was because, you remember when the Titanic sank, they didn't have radio tubes, but they had what they called an arc or spark transmitter. So anybody who worked with those spark transmitters was called Sparks.
Okay.
And I had that occasion on the Great Lakes. In 1939, I was on the ship with a spark transmitter. And in 1940, then they outlawed spark and arc transmitters every place in the world.
So you before joining the Merchant Marines, you served on ships previous to that?
On the Great Lakes, yeah.
On the Great Lakes. In what capacity?
Radio officer.
As a radio officer. So it came natural to you then to to join the Merchant Marines.
Yeah, I guess I've always been kind of foolish about electricity and radio. I started when I was about 5th or 6th grade. Got my license when I was 16, and then got my commercials and down the line.
So, Mr. Brown, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I can't claim any like myths of me. My ship was never torpedoed, and we never had air attacks on our ship, on our particular ship. So I don't have anything to brag or boast about.
Well, we'd like to thank you then for taking your time to giving this information. It is important, and we really appreciate you taking the time.